Sommerscield. Welcome to the Wise Agent webinar series. My name is Eleni Sommerscield. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at Wise Agent. And I'm joined today by a really dear friend of mine, Coni Meyers. Coni, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. I'm so excited to have you on the webinar and so you mentioned these kits a couple of times. Can you tell us like what goes into a kit and how do you calculate how many, like I'm a family of 5. So how many kits would I need?
Okay. Probably about 7.
7 kits. Okay.
Okay. So I don't want this to be overwhelming, but so you need to have your general kit that has everything in it that you would like a duffel bag or maybe 2 duffel bags. And one of the things you want to put in it is anything that's small enough to be that's an heirloom or valuable. One of the very first disasters I did, my first disaster was the Northridge earthquake. And after that, I did a flood in Central California. And one of the very first inspections I did, I drove up in front of this house and it was this elderly man. He had to be in his mid 80s. And he's sitting on the front porch and he's got what looks like just a bunch of wood. And I drove up and I got out of the car. He was in tears. I got out of the car. I walked up. I said, I'm Coni Meyers. I'm a FEMA inspector. How can I help you? And he said, this was my grandfather's toolbox. And my heart just broke because the thing had to be 150, 60 years old. Anyway, so if you, and one of the worst things people lose is our old fashioned hard copy pictures.
Yeah.
So if you have photos that are valuable to you or anything else, if it's too big to go into your emergency kit, make sure you have a plan for what you're going to do with that.
Yes.
Because that's the things that breaks people's heart.
Yeah.
Those are the things that are irreplaceable.
I'll tell you with the pictures, like, I have pictures of like my great grandparents and whatnot. And, some of them are overseas in Greece. And so what I've done when I was at my grandmother's house, I took pictures of all of them. And, my pictures, I have an iPhone, but you can do this with an iPhone. You could go to your iCloud, you could go to your Google Photos if you have an Android phone. I have mine connected to my Google Photos. So they're all in there and I can just search and say like, the Greek city name of where my grandmother lives. I can put that in and it'll bring up all of the pictures that I've ever taken in that city. So then I can show my kids like, oh, this is where, this was my great grandfather. This is my grandfather, because that's a great little tool because then I would hope that would be saved, but I don't live there. I'm not in that home all the time. And so if that's something that, it needs to be where it is. So that's something that's of value. You can take pictures of them and store those pictures.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what you should do is I always tell people, go inside your house, outside your house, open up every door, every drawer, take video of the rooms by room. And that way, when something does happen, you can go back and say, oh, well, I had this, this, and this, because I promise you, after a flood or a fire, you are not going to remember what you had. And so by having these videos, you can go back and look at it and say here. So in addition, so you need to have those, that's part of your plans. Mm-hmm. In your kit, you need to have your big kit, but then you need to have just an emergency go bag where if you have, like, if there's a fire, you may only have, like with our friend Sarah, she only had 15 minutes to get out. And she got to the shelter and she had forgotten anything for her 2 little girls. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's important to put these kits together ahead of time.
Yeah.
The number one thing you need to have in your kit is cash. Mm-hmm. And FEMA doesn't talk about it. Nobody talks about it. Mm-hmm. But if something happens where the power goes out and not everybody has a generator, they're starting to get there, but they're not there yet. You need to have cash. And people always ask me how much cash. I said, well, that depends on your area. Think about what it would cost you to go stay in a hotel room for 7 days and start with that.
Okay.
And then the other things are the basic stuff, but there's things like you want to have a whistle. You want to have fireproof matches. If you have food that's in cans, you need to have a can opener. I have a whole list.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, the download they're going to get today has a list.
Yeah.
So the second kit is a go kit. The third kit is a kit for your car, which is going to be different if you're Arizona versus upstate New York. You need to have one for your business. If you work outside of your home, what do you have do you have an emergency kit for you at your work? Then you need to have a kit for your kids, and that should be an individual kit for each kid. And let them, this is a good way for them to kind of overcome the fear or the scariness of it. Let them get the basics, and then let them put in like their favorite stuffed animal or favorite toy or whatever it is, and let them help to build their own little kit. And then you need to have, if you have anybody that's disabled or elderly that lives with you, you need to think about what those kits look like. But again, I don't want this to overwhelm people because it can be a lot. So just start with the basics. Just start with and then just create your plans.
Yeah.
You need a kid plan and a parent plan, a communications plan, an evacuation plan. You need to have all of those plans, and that's all in the download, and it's also in the book.
Yeah. And so there's a question on, is there a checklist to utilize or access so they can, see what all of this would be? And Coni has been gracious enough to give us access to that and give anyone that has a Wise Agent account. That is in one of the stock letters. I'm going to share my screen right now and show you guys how you could access this. So let me share my screen, because this is really important. What Coni said, she worked for FEMA. So knowing, where she said, like, have some cash on hand. If that's not something that they really talk about, Coni knows, because she was one of those people that would talk to you about it, right? And got trained on this. So from Wise Agent, if you just go to your letters and you open up your letters here, the Wise Agent letters, if you just look under, there's some letters here for disaster recovery, tips to prepare to survive and recover from disasters. And once you click on that, it will open up this letter where you could, either email this out, you could print this out and, have it at different open houses. You can give this out to anyone, put it in, put it in your, any kind of your marketing plan or whatever it is, or as a little emergency kit for them to start their emergency kit. But it says everything in here, cash and small bills, huh? You don't want to have a bunch of hundreds in there. Right. So what you need, it's all in here where you can have, where you'll have access to this to be able to send this out to your database really easily. There's also an emergency information sheet, right, Coni?
Yes.
You've also given us access to, which is great, because you need to know, like, who are all of your emergency contacts, right? And this would be not just for me to have, but also for like my kids to have. Leave that, because we talked yesterday for a minute, and you mentioned something to keep. Would this be something that they would keep on their front door? So if there was a fire.
Yeah. So this would not necessarily be what you
okay.
But make sure you put, if you are evacuating, if you're leaving, if you're going to a friend's house or a shelter or something, put on your front door that you're not in the house and where you've gone, because that way, when the first responders show up, they know they don't have to break down the door. They don't have to search inside the house because they know that you're out. So that's a really good way of helping the first responders. And along that line, you know who the first responders truly are when it comes to disaster? It is you and your neighbors. So you need to have a plan of what you're going to do. And there's an incredible free program. It's called the Community Emergency Response Teams. I talk about it in my training. I talk about it in my book on how to belong. And it's based upon the risks for the particular communities, but they have over 600,000 volunteers around the country. And I'm sure there's like over 2,700 now, because that number was from a little while ago, of people that are communities that actually have CERT programs. If your community does not have a CERT program, reach out to me. I've got the information on how to put one together. And there's nothing better than getting involved on the community level.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something, there's so many different things. I'm even thinking back when I first moved to Arizona, here, the wildfire season, if you have brush that's overgrown and touching your property, and maybe, the brush is touching your house, your roof line or something, you could even contact your town and have that cut back. So it helps you prevent fires. There's so many things to think about when you're thinking about some of these disasters that may happen. that really, it is hard to remember that as a property owner, but then as a realtor, try to conveying that to everybody, having all of those resources in one area where you can just say, hey, here's this pamphlet, here's this resource guide for you to, for the realtors to share with their clients and their potential clients, it's just so much value in that.